I'm James Rule. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, where we help existing and aspiring leaders find clarity, build resilience, drive performance, and enhance fulfillment. Leading through organisational change. That's the focus of today's episode, and it feels appropriate because I'm aware of it happening in so many of the areas in which I am working with leaders in different business sectors, different organizations all around the world. This notion of change is becoming ever more present. It could be restructures, it could be mergers, it can be created from a variety of causes, but the reality is change challenges everybody. It challenges the culture, the vibe, the feeling within an organization, and it particularly challenges a leader. Change is inevitable, but in my opinion, what separates the good and the great leaders is the ability to lead both yourself as a leader and your wider team through these periods of change. So why is it so difficult? Well, the reality is change is a disruptor. It can play with our sense of identity. It disrupts the rhythm of how we work and how we operate individually and collectively, and it pushes us all into unfamiliar territory. Now, it'd be wonderful if we could all say, well, that just excites us and we all embrace it, but the reality is very few of us do. Even though we know there may be longer term benefit for this change, when it is presented at our door, our immediate response is normally one of anxiety, fear, uncertainty, and that has a ripple effect. And for a leader, you have to be able to address that. And the key point in all of this is to remember that you are the emotional thermostat. When you are leading through change, everything you say, your words, your actions will influence how effectively you can step yourself and your wider team through the change process. So today, as ever, is very much about me trying to unpack some key takeaways that I have utilized when working with leaders in the midst and the process of this change process, and also that have benefited me through my journey as a CEO. All of our podcasts are based on lived life experience. They're not about preaching theoretical rhetoric from that proverbial ivory tower. They're about sharing with you do's and don'ts that have been implemented and that have developed key benefits. So before I dive into those key takeaways, I just want you to take a moment and reflect on who do you admire that has successfully led a team and organization through change. Perhaps it's someone in your existing ecosystem within the organization that you work in. Perhaps it's somebody that you've never met, but you've admired from afar. Perhaps it's a sporting leader. Perhaps it's somebody in politics. Perhaps it's somebody in business. There will be somebody, and I want you to have that individual in the back of your mind as I am walking through some of these key takeaways. And I almost guarantee that you will think, yep, they displayed that and they displayed this, and that's another trait that they implemented, because tapping into that is very personal. I want you to find that personal frame of reference that engages with you, but then reflecting back, as we always say, on these takeaways and saying, well, I admire that individual. These are some traits for me to reflect on. This individual certainly demonstrated them, and I believe I can draw upon that and I can demonstrate them and bring them to my own leadership style. And as ever, with everything we talk about, there may be points that I haven't considered, things that have been really helpful for you in your change process. Feel free to share them. I love the back and forth within the Lonely Leader community. You can reach me through the email, the DMs on LinkedIn, etc. There's various mechanisms within the show notes. So do please share your insights and things that have worked for you leading through that change process. So the first key takeaway is lead with clarity, not just charisma. Now, we've all been in those environments where somebody can be very charismatic, but they're not really giving you a great deal. And charisma is essential within leadership. Naturally, we've got to connect, we've got to build empathy and rapport with people. But in times of change, 101, absolutely core to everything we do is clarity. If we don't give people clarity about what is happening and going to happen, then people create their own narrative. And it's that old adage of you start a fire burning, it gets out of control, and all of a sudden, as a leader, you're absorbed in all that firefighting, trying to course correct, recalibrate the team, all because there was a lack of clarity and people created their own narrative as a consequence. The second key takeaway is create certainty where you can. This is very simple, but often overlooked. Everything might be changing. It might feel like the whole thing is upside down, but there will be opportunities to find a degree of certainty. It might be behavioral standards. It may be certain routines, certain systems, but you need to try and find things that people can hold on to. They need something that feels familiar and they need a constant whilst there is so much change. And that changes for every dynamic, every organization, every leader. There's no one size fits all, but reflect on whilst there's all this upheaval, what can we create certainty with? What practice, what strategy, what habit, what routine can we build around to give people a little bit of a guiding light, a little bit of a North Star to keep moving forwards with, whilst everything around it starts to change and evolve? Key takeaway number 3 is protect psychological safety. It pops up in so many of our podcast episodes for a reason. It is absolutely integral. If your group doesn't feel like they can speak up, they can contribute without fear of ridicule or criticism from you as the leader or other members of the group, then you are never going to truly navigate and maximize the opportunity that this change process presents. You need everybody on board. You need ideas coming from every touch point within the organization. You need people to feel that they can constructively feedback on what is working well in this change process, what isn't working well, and you need a humility as a leader to be able to listen to that, embrace it, and go, actually, fair point, let's just tweak and course correct slightly. Because if you don't have that, then you're in that dictatorial model. I'm the leader, do as I say, get on with it. You stifle that creative flow, you suppress all the innovation, you do not facilitate psychological safety, and I guarantee as a consequence, your highest performers will leave. They will be heading for the exit door. So it's very easy, it trips off the tongue. Yes, we've got psychological safety, but do you? Are you ensuring it exists? Because in a time of change more than ever, you must have that ability for everybody to feel that their voice matters, that they can contribute. Otherwise, you will create blind spots. You will walk into problems that could have been avoided, but we didn't see them coming because the people who did see them didn't feel comfortable to contribute. Create psychological safety at all costs. My next point is define the why. Drop the mic. Well, thanks, James. That's pretty obvious. But is it being implemented? Before you kick off this whole change process, make sure everybody in the organization understands the why. And then we step into the how. You cannot over communicate these simple premises to keep people aligned to the vision of this is why we are doing things. This is how we are going to do things. It ties right back into my first point. And as ever, there's overlap between all of these points. But if you're going to create clarity within that, people need to be absolutely clear. Why are we doing this? Why is this merger taking place? Why are we restructuring? How are we going to do it? Those two questions need to be able to be answered by everybody. If somebody can't clearly articulate why and how, then that's where those fires start burning. That's when people start creating their own narratives. That's when the whole mission, the whole organization can get knocked off course because people are stoking those notions of fear and anxiety, because where there's gaps, people will either innocently or maliciously step in and start creating the negative narratives, which are easily suppressed and overcome when everybody can say, nope, that's not the case. We all know exactly why we're doing it and how we're doing it. You remove that negativity, you extinguish those fires by ensuring that everybody has clarity and is able to answer those two questions. Stepping on from that, my next key point is check in with people on a one-to-one basis, not just groups. Now, when you've got a huge project in front of you, you can become overwhelmed as the leader with the impact on your diary. And it's tempting just to do everything in big group town hall style meetings because you get everybody together. Now, that's fine. There's a place for that. And I fully appreciate the pressures on your time management. And you can't simply sit down and have a one-to-one with everybody in the organization, particularly you leaders that are leading huge organizations. That being said, there are still within any scale and size of organization some non-negotiable one-to-ones. Certain people you need to ensure have that clarity, have that clear understanding of the why and the how, because you are relying on them to be your sergeants, your foot soldiers, your people that are able to carry the message forward for you into the wider organization. So sometimes it's tempting to say, I'll just do the big group discussion, but actually invest in a little bit more time to make sure that key personnel within the organization have absolute clarity, have an answer to the frequently asked questions that are going to come their way, can clearly articulate the hows and the why. Then that is investment of your time well spent, in my opinion, because you can't be everywhere, but there is a certain amount of time that needs to be invested up front. Otherwise, you don't build any momentum because everybody's so busy dealing with their own fears, their uncertainties, that they don't down tools literally, but it's that stalling of the engine, the momentum of the organization. Everybody's anxious and uncertain, and they're no longer focused on the destination and actually executing the how and the why. So invest in those people that can help carry that message forward. And remember that everybody reacts differently. Some people are very open at contributing in team meetings and big groups. Others wouldn't dare do it. So you need to pick off certain people one-to-one so that they give you a true reflection and insight on how they feel and their contribution. And also, it does come back to our earlier point that if you are required to do a lot more group meetings, then you really do need to make sure that psychological safety exists. Otherwise, great ideas are left on the sideline because people don't feel comfortable to contribute, as we said in the earlier point. My next key point is don't fake confidence. Now, people that have listened to a lot of the podcast episodes will know that I'm a big believer of authenticity. No two people are the same. You will have your own leadership style and DNA. People trust you. They feel that they are seeing the real you. When things are going well, when things are going badly, there's occasional times you have to show vulnerability. It's all part of building your own leadership style. And so when you're about to be the leader or the architect of a big change process, you're at the forefront of a merger or a restructure, it's absolutely fine to not have all the answers. So there's no point because you erode your authenticity, you erode that credibility with your people, faking confidence and say everything here is guaranteed to work. Actually, it's more about having confidence in the process, encouraging everybody to have confidence in the process. And this all comes back through the earlier points we've made. You let people know you're going to be communicating regularly. You're going to be clear on making sure everyone understands the why and the how. There's going to be one-to-one opportunities to present feedback. There's going to be group meetings to present feedback. All of these facets ensure that people can have confidence in the process. You want people to feel psychologically safe. If they don't, they've got to let you know. You will address it. So all of these things tie back into this point of nobody expects you to guarantee success. None of us are clairvoyants. None of us can look into the crystal ball and stand behind something. And overconfidence just loses credibility with people. You're far better to say, there's going to be some twists and turns. We're not 100% sure of exactly how this will work, but we are 100% sure of why we're doing it, and we're 100% sure of what we believe success will look like at the end. But we have to have the adaptability and the willingness to correct en route to get there, both as individuals and as a collective. And that leads me nicely into my next tip: celebrate small wins. In a big change process, it's easy to drown in the overwhelming sense of, oh my word, are we ever going to get there? Plus, going back to my earlier point, when you want people to trust in the process, you've got to celebrate the wins along the way. Success isn't just about, well, when we get there, that's success. If we don't get there, it's a failure. There are steps towards that end destination. So stay cognizant of where those opportunities are to celebrate wins, either individual performance or sub teams within your business performance, but look out for them, recognize them, celebrate them, because it helps boost everybody's confidence and belief that we're going to achieve this. We are going to get to that destination. We understand the why, and here's evidence of the how in process working well. If that individual's had success or that team over there has had success, I too can have success as an individual or within my team en route to this final destination. So my next tip is reward adaptability. The challenge for a lot of people is they lose their confidence. They lose their faith in their own ability, and they come continually back to your door as the leader to say, what do I do next? How do I deal with this? What do I do after I finish this? Now, that's fine. There's a degree of everybody needs to understand the parameters of what they're doing and how they're being held accountable. But what you can't do is end up drowning in a sea of feedback that really individuals should be able to deal with themselves. We don't want you getting pushed back into a scenario where you're having to micromanage every facet of the business. So those people that are showing an ability to be adaptable, yes, they've got the overall brief, the direction of travel, what we're doing, where we're trying to get to, but they're able to think on the feet. They're able to adapt, reward that, celebrate that, reinforce the fact that you trust your people, you've got faith and confidence in them to deliver the outcomes, and you want them to be adaptable. You know that there's a clear understanding of the outcome and the end point of where we're trying to get to, but you're not holding people in such a narrow parameter that there's only one way to get there. Now, this is different and nuanced in every organization, and I'm not advocating that you just let go of the reins and people are being adaptable, but doing all sorts of negative impacts on your strategy by taking themselves or their teams down the wrong routes. But I think you know the flavor of what I mean. It's easy for a leader to get absolutely swamped in micromanagement when people are uncertain. What you've got to do is help them get that confidence back and have that faith in themselves to crack on, adapt, evolve, and that you will support them and encourage them to do that. And that takes me into my next tip: over communicate. I've touched on communication multiple times, but it feels right to mention it again in the spirit of over communication. You really can't communicate too much during these periods of significant change. We've talked about the need for clarity. It comes from communication. We've talked about the need for understanding the why and the how. It links back into communication. We've talked about picking people off in a one-to-one format as well as in groups. It sits under communication. We've talked about the need to facilitate psychological safety. That's all about watching and understanding how communication is taking place. We want to be able to communicate as frequently as possible. So if you think you've done enough, do a little bit more. It keeps everybody on track. It suppresses the negativity, the fear, and the uncertainty. Don't stop communicating. Within your communication, make sure that you are setting clear short-term targets. It's another simple but easy to overlook step to reduce overwhelm, fear, and anxiety. The end point can seem a bit daunting. It can seem a long way off. It can give people a little bit of intimidation where they're like, are we ever going to get there? So sometimes we have to chunk it down, as with any strategy, and say, that's the end point. This is where we want to be in a month from now, a quarter from now, 6 months from now. A lot of people find it so much easier to build that momentum, to enhance their confidence if they've got that clearer short-term goal en route to the bigger prize. So make sure within the communication that everybody also has clarity of that's where we're going, but what are our short-term, medium-term steps? And that will help build that momentum and get through this change process all the quicker. My last two tips are very much about you as an individual. So firstly, stay visible. It's very easy to get sucked into that strategic overview, to be drawn into endless meetings, to be reflecting on plans, strategies, and all the key steps that need to take place. Of course, that's sacrosanct, but carve out the time to stay visible. A leader I was working with recently within an NHS trust talked about just doing the walk around. It's such a simple but easy again to overlook strategy of just being seen within the hospital, popping in for a quick conversation here and there. If somebody's got a burning desire and something they need to bounce off you, then they get the opportunity. But it's also a reassurance. Our leader is on deck. I saw her this morning. I saw him just last night. It's reassuring. We all like to be reassured in times of uncertainty, and your very presence is a form of reassurance for your team. And last but not least, embody the change yourself. Your actions, your words will always speak far louder than any strategy document or rollout plan. People are watching you, people are listening to you, and you need to epitomize everything that is integral to a successful change process. And my concluding phrase, which I think frames this perfectly, is that in times of change, people don't follow plans, they follow people. You could have the most polished manifesto, mission document, bound and distributed to all your staff. You could have slide decks, you could have images all over walls in the office or the canteen or the corridors. It doesn't really matter when compared against how you act, how you communicate. People will move through change if they believe in you, you retain your authenticity, and you execute all of these key steps consistently. They will follow you. They will follow you through the change process and out the other side. Conversely, when we get trapped in strategy, we lose our visibility. We're not keeping an eye on psychological safety. We're not communicating frequently enough. We're not using the appropriate forms of communication. When those things start to permeate, then the change process is all but doomed. Yes, there can still be change, but it'll be far longer than it needs to be. It'll be far more stressful. There'll be far more collateral damage in terms of the impact on morale and the culture of the organization. Invariably, you will lose some of your better performers just because they don't want to be in that negative environment or that treacle-like environment where this change is taking too long. When you execute these steps well and it all comes together, all the reverse happens. People feel empowered, people feel energized, they feel like they have a voice, they're excited to contribute to this change, they're excited to be in a part of realizing the change, and it brings in the highest performers, it retains the highest performers, and actually it leads everybody individually and collectively to a better place, because that's why this change process was started in the first place, because you as a leader believe it needs to happen to improve things. So let's get there as quickly and as painlessly as we can, retaining everybody on the journey with us. I hope these reflection points are helpful. I hope you were bouncing them off that individual leader that you've admired over the years, and you've been able to say, yes, they display a huge number of these traits. And then the final call to action is, so what change do you need to lead through? How are you going to start it? How are you going to bring these traits to life in your own style? And I wish you the very best of luck in successfully navigating through that change process, whatever it looks like for you in your organization. Thanks for listening to the Lonely Leader podcast. I'd be very grateful if you could share and follow if the content resonates. And if you're looking for additional free resource to support your continued growth and development, then please do check out our social media and website details in the show notes. Remember, quality leadership on the outside must always start within.